We got Gators Breakdown here. We know we're business.
Gators Breakdown, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. And you know who was not ready to go? That Florida Gator football program on Saturday afternoon. Miami was ready to go. Put it on Florida. Embarrassing, unacceptable loss here. Credit to Miami for one thing. Better team. I thought they'd be good this year. I thought Florida would be better, honestly. we know you. I'm sure you guys listened to the preview. It's going to be a good team. I thought Florida would be a good team as well, but not the case. Not the case here. A lot of questions. Well, probably a lot of answers too, huh? I think for every question or a lot of the questions we had coming into this game and coming into this 2024 season, some of you already had your answers. Some of you got more answers. That's what we're going to get into here on this episode of Gators Breakdown. Of course, we'll look at the game. We'll have to look at the game, but also, sadly, we already have to look at big picture items as well. Would we be looking at the big picture items as much if it was a hard-fought, close, competitive game like most of us thought it would be, win or lose? Probably not. But when you get beat 41-17, another loss to a rival, a one that you're going probably head-to-head with more than anybody on the recruiting trail right now. There's a lot of big picture items to get into, and that's where we'll start here on this episode of Gators Breakdown. Then we'll get into the game a bit. Also, guys, leave your comments. I know there's going to be a lot. I've already seen a lot. I will try and get to them. Thanks for joining me live here on this Sunday. So, of course, toward the end of the episodes when I'll do that, so I'll have to come all the way back up to the top and try and get them. But we'll see. We'll see how many I can get in there because I see them fast and furious. So I'll come back around to that. If you want even more conversation, of course, you can join Gators Breakdown Plus. That Discord right now is about how you can imagine it. So if you want to revel in misery, I say in a good way, and there's some good constructive criticism, conversations going on right there on the Discord. You can join Gators Breakdown Plus. Link is in the description. We'll be doing a chat soon as well. Get thoughts of the fan base in that form as well. So certainly not the way we wanted to get that season started. So conversation hot and heavy right there on the Gators Breakdown Plus Discord. If you want to take part in those conversations, link is in the description. Hit that like button. Subscribe right here before we get started. I know you certainly didn't like the result. Did not like the result. Friday night was a whole lot of fun going around Gainesville and hanging out with a bunch of friends and going to the Florida Victorious event. That was fun. The tailgate was fun. Gainesville was ready. Driving down Museum Road at about 6 o'clock in the morning. With that game kickoff being at 3:30, it was certainly ready to go. To me, this fan base has been waiting and certainly didn't get any kind of result that we wanted. I think the fan base was ready to go, though. But the team in the swamp didn't give much reason to cheer. So, talking about that team, for a team, and we heard it all, especially SEC media days and all the media stuff and all the spring speaking tour, for a team that was supposed to be over the hump, finally had experience. All that stuff supposed to make this huge difference and turn this program around. I bought and buying into the experience as far as the talent side of this thing goes, but the coaching side of this thing, it's not matching up. It's not matching up. I don't think the talent is that bad. I don't think talent is 41-17 bad. The coaching might be that bad. But all that stuff that's supposed to make this huge difference in turning the program around, it just seemed like the same song and dance we've seen for the last couple of seasons. So much confidence and exuding from Billy Napier that we were going to see a different team this fall. He and the players were, tired of hearing about how bad they were and they're going to go prove themselves right and others wrong. Well, that's not what we got in this first game of the season. Miami destroys Florida 41-17 in the swamp. Wasn't really that much of a game, honestly. And this is a game that was against a program that made a coaching hire the same exact timeline as Florida, had many of the same questions coming into yesterday's game. But when you look at it, one team looks like they have taken the necessary steps to be successful. Their coaching hires, staff hires, NIL approach, and having that translate to recruiting, their portal strategy. All the things that were also there for Florida in the last 2 seasons on the same timeline, they were able to put it together and just take it to Florida in a game where Florida gives up the most points ever in a home opener. The most points ever in a home opener. Now, we know a lot of the opponents have not been great throughout the years, but still. We're looking at, 120 years of Florida Gator football, thereabout? The most points ever in a home opener. This is year 3. That is not progress. That's nowhere near progress. That's regression. That is not what you start a year 3 out with. What does Billy Napier do well? I mean, I've been on this podcast and stuff. I like Billy Napier the person, and I thought this might be the year. I was hovering 8-4, 7-5, going back and forth there. Probably overshot that by a good margin already after week 1. We'll get into it. Is there some overreaction here? We'll see. But here he is, year 3, game 1, at the podium after the opening game of the season and rightfully calling this an embarrassing loss. And it falls squarely on him. This fan base has been ready. I've seen it. You've seen it. We all seen it. Been ready to support. I really think a lot of this fan base was just waiting, still waiting for something to latch onto, something tangible to hitch their wagon to Napier. But instead of getting any of that, you just get gut punch after gut punch after gut punch. This one probably the biggest one, honestly. Because I do think there was a lot of buy-in at, okay, all this experience, all this supposed depth might pay off this year. Example 1 so far, not all that great. This was supposed to be the game to start all that. And just completely no-showed. Outmanned, outcoached, unacceptable, embarrassing. Any form of those words fit this. So once again, I truly believe Napier thought he had this team in a good spot coming into yesterday. Turns out the confidence, unwarranted, false. This can mean 2 things. Either this one was an aberration and not indicative of this team's true ability, more on that in a second, or Napier and his staff couldn't see the deficiencies, which is pretty concerning. If that's the case, if that's where he really thought this team was, and if that's what we see throughout this season, that's very, very, very concerning. It's hard to imagine from our perspective that what we saw out there gave any head coach confidence. Maybe it did. Maybe he was blind to it. That's a scary thought. This team is nowhere near as good as what he thought. Now, of course, I've come on here and talked about what I like as well. And I still like the talent makeup of this team in many areas. You guys know my concerns as well. And I said it will have to be the coaching that puts it together, because I like the talent. And no, is it the championship roster talent? No. Nobody's asking Florida to go win a title. I still put a 7-8 win cap on this season. But after what we saw Saturday, they did a terrible job. Don't get me wrong. One more. Saturday was a look at Miami having more talent in Florida, especially at quarterback, especially in the trenches, both sides of the ball, pretty much everywhere, but definitely those areas. I'm not going to believe 41-17 better, but they are clearly better. And then that gap was multiplied by coaching failures. Maybe that failure was just staring Napier in the face all offseason and he just didn't know it. 41-17 is failure everywhere. Program, staff, scheme, recruiting, development, talent, it all contributes when you lose 41-17. And a good Miami team, where all those items I just mentioned being put on display with the arrow pointing up. Same exact timeline. And they put it on you 41-17. So they look like a good team, and that's also how you get 41-17. So now back to that other part of the equation. I'm saying Napier feeling good about this team. So maybe, hopefully, if you want to look at it another way, that this game maybe was an aberration, not indicative of what we'll see the rest of the 11 games of the season. Maybe everything Napier believes in and some of what I believe in as far as experience and depth in certain spots shows up the rest of the season. But if those things are true, what does Saturday show us why that would be the case? Why should we believe that it was an aberration, that it's not indicative of what we'll see? Yes, it's only one game of the 2024 season. So can this be a reaction? Sure, I'll admit it. That could be the case. But why should we believe it right now? Yes, it's only one game for the 2024 team and season, but this is the same thing we've seen the last two seasons. Florida's 6th straight loss overall dating back to last season. You had all offseason to prep for this game, and this is what you come out with? Why should there be belief that this is just a one-game thing? Last 2 years have shown us, no, it's probably not. We know the stakes of this game. It was embarrassing and unacceptable. Gator fans should not have to accept this. Nobody should. Florida's the laughing stock of college football after week 1. So I think whatever reaction you may think is over the top right now, it's warranted. It's actually warranted. I hope in a few weeks we're coming back and laughing at this somehow, some way. Do you really see that happening? This fan base supports, get this teeth kicked in, not only to be told the situation isn't that bad and this year's different. What have we seen to believe that? Nothing. What's being done well by this staff and program? Where we are to believe this is just one game. I don't care it's a different season. I don't care it's a different team. It's the same head coach that hasn't shown us anything to be able to turn around after what we saw on Saturday. But I want somebody to tell me right now why we should believe this thing gets turned around. You can't. And not me believe it, honestly. You can try all you want to. All right, we will get to the game. I'm gonna come to the comments. I'll go to the top because there's gonna be a lot. So excuse the silence here, especially if you're listening on podcasts and not in the chat. But the old bass says, I was dumbfounded and I blame Billy for this hangover this morning. That coffee won't fix. Yeah, the coffee didn't taste too good this morning. It didn't. It tastes so good after those wins, but no. Scott, 20 says, this reminds me of the opening game against Michigan a few years ago, and that was pretty indicative of how the rest of the season was going to go, right? Now, some different circumstances going in that game. You had the credit card scandal and quarterback issues, and yeah, but that was pretty much a sign of how that season was going to go. But as I said, this one was at home. There was so much behind it. Going against a team that was on the same timeline as you under Mario Cristobal and that staff. Both staffs going into year 3. They had questions. I mean, every team's got questions going into the first game of the season. But a lot of the questions was like game day coaching. What was Billy Napier going to do on game day? What was Mario Cristobal going to do on game day? Mario Cristobal completely owned Billy Napier on the field yesterday. Let's see. I know there's some coaching names and stuff. I ain't not gonna get hit on that right now. Ain't no sense in talking other names till this early. I mean, is it a topic? Sure. Is Billy Napier even more on the hot seat than he was yesterday? Sure. But still too early for me to be talking to other coaches right now. Is it closer to happening? Like coming into this season, you had so many people saying, no matter what, Billy Napier's not going to get fired. I never bought into that. An absolute dumpster fire of a season, it was absolutely on the table. And then after yesterday, it's even more so on the table. And I know it for a fact. So he'll have to get some things turned around this season if he wants to be head coach next year. Yesterday was unacceptable to many and to many important people. All right, let's go. Let's see. Nope, not talking about coaching candidates yet. Young Heisman 10 says, glad to see you again, Dave. Best part of Saturday was definitely the Harmonic Woods tailgate. Should have kept the party going. Yeah, team didn't keep that party going in the swamp, but yeah, I mean, like I said, you could tell by tailgates, you could tell by being around the support's there. The support's there, but you can't keep gut punch kicking in the teeth over and over again. I mean, the line's pretty much been drawn right now. There's not a lot of belief in where this thing is heading. JR does say we are worse, and that's the scary thing. As I said, it's year 3, and you have somehow, so far, I mean, this is the only, lack of a better term, data point we have. You look worse. You look like a worse team. Graham Mertz certainly regressed even before he got hurt in the first half when he had time to throw. We'll get into that, but that was unacceptable for a quarterback that was in his 6th year, supposed to be taking steps in the 2nd year of this program. He was nowhere near what we saw last year. Even when they tried to play it safe, which he excelled at last year, couldn't do that. I know this was a joke sent to this, but certainly comes to this. The swamp is too loud. The swamp is impossible to play at. The swamp is too hot. Yeah, that certainly didn't show its face, did it? And as I said, one reason I was picking Florida for this game is that early home season, or that early home game of the last couple of seasons, Napier's found a way to win that one. But I also came back and said, when people would say, oh, we can't lose in the swamp. Did you forget Arkansas last year? I've said that many times. You can't completely overlook it. Now, don't get me wrong. I was picking Florida because of it. But in the back of my mind, it's like, well, it's not this undefendable thing that we've seen lately. I didn't think it would show up Saturday. But also, credit to Miami for uglying the game up in that first half. Florida still had their chances in the first half a bit, but you could kind of tell where the game was going. But the way the game was playing out, even in the first half, it basically after the Shamar interception, the Montreal run, you had your classic swamp feel, but you heard Cam Ward kind of take a dig at the fan base. You got to be loud in the huddle. That's when the communication's happening, not after the huddle. There, so yeah, it wasn't. And credit to Miami for that part of it, but it wasn't the swamp we were expecting. But they had a lot to do with that. All right, let's see, because some of this is going to about the game itself, which I will get into. All right, let's see. Sorry, guys. Ton of Cane fans in here, so to be expected. To be expected, of course. Keep it respectful. I mean, talk. Celebrate if you want. If you're gonna be in here, just don't be going after people. I can block if I can keep up with it too, of course. This could kind of take us into the game talk. And Edward Bloom said, no one said it directly, but anytime anyone doubted the offense, they were called idiots, didn't know ball, and Billy's scheme was great, and it was players' fault for not executing. Yeah, the concerns I showed, which we'll get into, I certainly got blasted on. But there was plenty of concerns and questions to ask that were right to be asked. And so many of those questions that we had really just fell on their face in the first game of the season. Like, we didn't get anything really steps forward. Maybe linebacker spot. Love the way Pup Howard played in his first game there. Shamar had the interception. But overall, defense well over 500 yards given up. So it doesn't matter. Kind of like last year when you could say, if you really wanted to, hey, this defense is better down to down, but they kept giving up explosives. So it didn't really matter in the end. All that matters is the result. I don't care if that looks better, this looks better. Point at one stat and say, hey, look, there are steps being made. It doesn't matter. You got beat 41-17, giving up over 500 yards of offense. Doesn't really matter what got better. Okay. Yeah, this is point 2. Dave, I've never seen a softer team at Florida. Starts at the top. I blame the top guy. Time to fire him, the AD. No, I'll keep it with the. Let me look. You guys got my thoughts on Napier. Look, to me, it's going to be hard to dig out of this. I'll put it there. It's hard to see the path out. It is very hard to see the path out. I think the hole was dug. Year 1 and year 2. This was your chance to dig out, and somehow, I guess you didn't. I guess the bottom was still there. I guess you still had some more digging to do because somehow, I told you guys after the Arkansas loss last year, if you remember right, that was the rock bottom moment for me with this staff last season. It's like it didn't matter. That was rock bottom. Inexcusable loss when you still had some kind of momentum. You got beat by Georgia, but you had that big win over South Carolina. People were saying, "Oh, Florida might give Georgia a chance." Not really, but you still returned home against Arkansas and that inexcusable loss. And that's where I was like, that's where my biggest questions of this staff and the direction started coming in. And then credit, you guys know, I still a lot of fan in me. Bought into a lot of the talk in the offseason, but still for a 7-5, 8-4 type of season. No way overcoming expectations in 10-2, 9-3. I thought that was just way out of line. Not where this team was, not what we had seen so far. But I did believe in some of the steps that were going to be made. And like I said, maybe, I hope we come back and laugh at this one day. I don't see that happening. But going back to your point, Rod, yeah, we had heard all offseason new strength and conditioning. And I warned you guys, we hear it all. That's why I didn't spend a whole lot of time on it. It gets every offseason, every team is bigger, faster, stronger. Every team. I don't care what the weight gain shows. It's every team. Every team says that. What happens when you go play 60 minutes on the field? That's what I want to know. And we saw yesterday, Miami just bully Florida. In every sense of the word, every sense of football, they bullied Florida. This team wasn't ready to play maybe mentally, physically, they just were not ready. This is the other thing, too. Gator says, I have never felt that embarrassed in the swamp. You share that sentiment with a lot of people. Tons of text messages, tons of DMs. Worst loss I've ever been to. I spent all kinds of money for this. This is unacceptable. Fans leaving in the third quarter. I mean, yeah, this one goes back to me probably personally for me. I think it would have been 2004 LSU, maybe. Night game in the swamp. LSU just comes in and runs all over Ron Zook. As far as, just a game that just wasn't there to begin with. What was it? Missouri and Muschamp. That kind of reminds me of that game at one point. So, or was it Missouri and Mullen? One of the I think they both had that home Missouri game that felt like that. But yeah, this was one of the most embarrassing performances, moments for a Gator. It's definitely under Billy Napier. So Arkansas last year, this one, like, given who you were going against, game 1 of the season, trying to get off on a good start. You can see why this one's more so embarrassing. And as I said, I'll go back to it one more time. A program that was on the same timeline as you. And definitely, we've chronicled it mainly in the offseason, but the different approaches they took in building a roster, in developing, using NIL, all that has been there for Florida to do as well. Billy Napier chose to go one direction, not hit the portal hard early, not quote-unquote overspend in recruiting. There is no such thing as overspending in recruiting. That is the craziest thing I've ever heard, especially when you're in Florida's situation the last, from Mullen to Napier, and in the situation of Napier and what we've seen the last couple of years. Don't you think you probably have to overpay with what we've seen on the field? If there is such a thing, you are worth what somebody's willing to pay you in this world. And Billy Napier told everybody wants to go back to his first opening press conference to say they want to use that part and throw it in our face. Was I told you guys this was going to take some time. Well, every head coach says that to try and buy themselves some time. But you know what he also said? That you don't forget, this is a talent acquisition business. High school recruiting has been nowhere near what we wanted it to be, especially, and we'll get into it, the offensive line, which is probably, if you want to point to just one area, there's multiple, of course, but if we start there. But both these programs chose a path, had a line of decisions being made. And we'll see what Miami turns into, but still, it doesn't matter what they turn into. They still put it on you 41-17 in the swamp. Actually, if Miami goes on, I don't think they will. I think they're going to be a pretty good team. But if they go on to look like the last couple of years in some ways, this actually makes this look worse. It actually makes this look worse. But they chose their path, and their path looks like it's going to lead them to some bit of success this season. Kwame Canty says Cam Ward is him. Absolutely. I gave him credit during the game. As I said in the preview last week, he was certainly better than Tyler Van Dyke. And look, I didn't mean that as a hit to him because there's a lot of quarterbacks that would be better than Tyler Van Dyke. But yeah, but also at the same time, he did surprise me in everything he showed there. That first drive where he was making some plays with his legs, we hadn't seen that a ton previously. Granted, I didn't watch every snap of Cam Ward in the last couple of years. But then just his ability to extend plays, make plays, I think he showed something. He showed a different level, even more than yesterday than he previously did. He had a different level to him. Thanks for the donations, guys. Amazement does say, honestly, I thought it was over when the Canes got TD before the half, especially since Miami were getting ball first. Lack of discipline keeps showing up too. Yeah, when we talk about this staff and being better there, I mean, I guess, yay, special teams were a little bit better. Yay. But the crucial penalties to keep drives alive for the Miami offense, Justice Boone and his personal foul, DJ Douglas, I believe, on his personal foul as well, roughing the passers both, keeping Miami drives alive. Certainly the discipline angle. And it's just one more thing that you take a look at this staff and the things that were supposed, when Billy Napier was hired, the things we thought we were supposed to be getting. A smart, disciplined team that's not going to beat themselves. That's why when I say, why are we to believe this is just a one-game aberration? It's not. Those things we thought we were getting when Billy Napier was hired as head coach have never shown up on the field in any consistent form or fashion. Not just, it just hasn't been there. This job is probably too big for you. I think I lost where I was in the chat. Oh, there we go. I think I got it. I think I caught up. So, all right, let me get to the game. I'll come back to some of these comments. So let's take a look at the game and kind of why we're all frustrated. I mean, because that play, just minus the loss, minus the 41-17 loss. There's like I said, we had so many questions coming into this one. And those questions got answered. They certainly did. Not the way we wanted them to. Not much to really enjoy from it, of course. Many questions and concerns we had, full display. They were all full display. And I don't like to be petty about my own team, but most of you guys know how I operate. I don't try to blow smoke. I'll be wrong at times. Absolutely. If I believe it. But information I share, concerns I share, they're going to be legit. I'll be wrong. Doing this line of work, you're going to be wrong. But when I express concern about something, it's not for clicks. It's not to be negative. It's a legit concern. And I got slammed for these comments on this offensive line a couple of weeks ago. And that was on full display against Miami. And why was it a concern? Because of who we were playing. Game one. I outlined in the preview all last week about how good that offensive line could potentially be. I think we all knew it would be there. or how bad this offensive line could be. How good the Miami offensive line could be, sure. But this offensive line for Florida, blasted for concern. No, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't see it. I talk to the right people. I don't blow smoke. Is it always going to be right? No. But I showed a level of concern that should not have been overlooked. This offensive line couldn't run block. That's the one thing they were supposed to do well, outside of one huge Montreal run, and certainly couldn't hold up in the biggest question we had of all, and that was the pass blocking. And guys, don't forget, this was without Ruben Bain, by the way, who played, one drive? And the Canes front just controlled the game. No holes for the backs, no time for the quarterback for the most part. Mertz had his chances in the first half, but mentioned it earlier, returned to the Wisconsin Graham Mertz. Bad decisions, late throws. Second half, he just gets pummeled over and over. Throws an interception that terrible, probably gunshot at that point, but had time for that throw. Throws an interception that was a terrible decision. Then gets knocked out on that play due to concussion. This offensive line was a concern we thought it would be. And big picture for the offensive line, they got that saying 5 equals 1. Well, the better equation is 2 coaches equals 0 recruiting and 0 development. Now, going back at Louisiana was a staff that recruited that position, developed that position, sent guys to the league, brought Osiris Torrance to Florida, sent him to the league. Haven't seen any of that. And I told you guys, if that was going to be your calling card, it's got to show up in year 3. That's enough time for your development. That's enough time for your strength and conditioning to take over. A strength and conditioning change you had to make after 2 seasons. But if development was going to be your calling card, that would have to show up. And that was a putrid performance. That right side of the offensive line still, it might be even worse than what I thought it would be. And I already showed my concern about that. That was sad. And then I think on that Mertz interception, no try in trying to chase down the interception. Once again, the biggest concern we as a fan base have shown, a complete weak link in this offense. And it's going to hold the offense back. Now, Lagway with his legs, we'll see how much playing time he gets. It can help a bit. That's what happened in 2022. It was an okay offensive line made better by Anthony Richardson. We're really good at run blocking. Pass blocking was in question, but we're helped out by your quarterback. So we'll see how that plays out. But if Graham Mertz is going to come back and be the quarterback, anytime you go up against a good defensive line, there's going to be a ton of concern there. Then on the other side, what was the question coming in for the defense? Well, a lot of questions. But what was the main question? The pass rush. Well, that was non-existent. Hardly any one-on-one battles won. Could only get pressure with blitzing, which really didn't work either. After the first Miami drive where Cam Ward used his legs for a bit of yards, the defensive line had to play pretty conservative, which led for even more time for Ward, even more time for him to extend plays. DBs eventually just broke, started getting picked apart. Some receivers just wide open. So once again, the biggest question we had coming from last season and pressuring the quarterback was a bad answer in game 1. Florida's first sack didn't come to 12 minutes left in the game. The game was well out of hand. Now, we all knew Miami had that good offensive line. But if Florida was making progress, should not have been that bad. Florida just rarely pressured. 9 times on 38 dropbacks. That was all the pressure that was there. And then Cam Ward turned it into something. But it wasn't because of Ward. It's that physical play that we were just talking about. Physical play. Florida just out physical by Miami's front. Dominant play up front. So answer me this. What team has recruited? What team has spent heavy NIL dollars and developed a position that they were going to be known for under Mario Cristobal? The team that won 41-17. So we'll zoom out just a little bit. We'll come away from the trenches. Lagway eventually takes over from Mertz after the Mertz concussion. Did show some good things. Game was already well in hand for Miami, so hard how much to know to take away. But he gets his feet wet in that environment. We'll see. Hopefully that pays off. Had some nice plays with Trey Wilson. Had some nice plays. We saw what he could do with his legs a bit. But, before injury, looking at this offense, before the injury to Mertz, play calling, very questionable, predictable once again. Wide receivers couldn't consistently get open. I noticed that a good bit. Some of the reasons Mertz hanging on to the ball, couldn't find anybody. Wide receivers were not open. It was inconsistent, kind of like it was last year. Routes on top of each other too often. Speaking of Trey Wilson, didn't get the ball enough after the first drive. Something that we had seen all last year. That, hey, this offense is supposed to be changing a little bit. Hey, Trey Wilson's going to get the ball more. And once again, staff really not using him consistently. And just really, really disappointed as well as couldn't get that run game established. Miami took control of the game by stopping Florida's rushing attack. You go back to the preview last week, and I said, look, I'm giving Miami's pass rush all the credit in the world. Go run right at them. See if you could control the game that way. Nope. Miami, they were bodies up front. They were stacking. They were not afraid of Florida's passing game, and completely shut down the Florida run game outside the Montrell Johnson run. And then once Miami scores before halftime, once right after halftime, Florida was taken out of it. Florida couldn't run the ball anymore if they wanted to stay in the game. The game was essentially over at that point. Here's the thing, guys. Stat of the game. I put it on social media right before I went live here. Florida, 1 of 9 on third down. The average third down distance for Florida to go was 9.7 yards. Florida was averaging 3rd and 10 for the game. So it's basically like you didn't gain any yards on first down or second down. You were averaging 3rd and 10 for the game. So let's go even deeper on those third downs. Florida was 3 of 6 passing on third down for 10 yards. 3 of 6 for 10 yards on third down. Turn that around. Cam Ward, 6 of 8 on third down for 126 yards and a touchdown. So Florida's going 3 of 6 for 10 yards on third down. Cam Ward, 6 of 8, 126 yards and a touchdown. There's your stat of the game. And then for all this talk, zoom it back out to the whole team again. All these new coaches. We'll start since we just talked offense. Callaway is supposed to be responsible for third downs, red zone portions of the offense. Florida gets a turnover. Great field position. Has to set a 4-field goal. I just told you the third down stats there. On defense, Chapman up front with that defensive line. Early returns right now, not great. Will Harris in that secondary. As I said, I think they hung tough a bit in the first half. I think eventually just broke down. Cam Ward back there all day to throw. Eventually, you're going to find somebody. But there were also times, too, I just really believe that receivers for Miami just open. Finding fits in those zones. Zone defense is supposed to give Cam Ward all kinds of problems. He figured it out pretty quick. He had that pick. But he figured out what Florida was doing pretty quick and made some really good throws. Picked apart the defense. End of the game, of course, injuries come into play. Graham Mertz, we already discussed. And then Asa Turner, first game, gets juked out of his socks. He goes down with an injury. We all know about his injury history at Washington. Game 1 for Florida, it's already there. And talk about injury history, Devin Moore, AC joint injury, shoulder injury. Now, if you were Gators Breakdown Plus members, Friday night, I told you probably wasn't going to start. Thanks to Kyle for, I hope he's listening. But giving me that info Friday. I had to confirm it, asked around. So that Jakeem Jackson got to start. Devin Moore was dealing with tonsil issue, of course, all fall camp. What was listed first on the depth chart. But they let you guys know on Gators Breakdown Plus Friday that he was not going to start. Jakeem was going to start, but Devin Moore did get some time and then didn't last long out there with another injury for him. Well, guys, I didn't give you much warning when I was going live. Thank you so much for about 800 people in here. I'm sure some Miami fans want to revel in this as well. But Gator fans, thank you so much hopping in here. 800 listeners strong right now. Thanks for the comments. Army Sniper says, Dave, tell the beat writers to not show up to Billy's presser. Well, no, I think you want to show up. Hopefully, some really good questions are asked about this. And, Napier couldn't really speak on the game too much, didn't want to speak on the game too much as far as what went wrong, what could have done better, because he wanted to watch the film. They'll do all day today. So hopefully we'll get some of those answers from Billy Napier there. But, we'll see. Also Labor Day, too. I got to figure out. I haven't got the schedule for yet, so hopefully there is a Monday press conference. But we'll see. Maybe later on in the week before we actually hear from Napier. But here's the thing about that too, guys. Kind of going on what this loss looks like, and talked about it before. Another reason you wanted to win this, we already knew about the hot seat talk. We knew about the pressure, but Samford's coming up next. So besides Lagway more than likely making his first start, I'm going to assume, we're still going to be stewing on this for a couple of weeks till A&M rolls into town. Close loss to Notre Dame on Saturday night. And after what we saw Saturday, which many Gator fans were penciling in a win to over Texas A&M, well, might be staring 1 and 2 in the face. But with Samford coming up, it's going to be hard to move on from this. And that was another reason I think a win goes a long way. You had 2 weeks of celebration. There would have been some good feelings in the program that would have been sustained for a couple of weeks. Now, you get this for a couple of weeks. So what was already a loud fan base coming in is even louder and even more rightfully so negative. I didn't want to say toxic because that, once again, I applaud the fan base. We should voice your concerns and feelings about what we are seeing here. Now, there's a limit to this, of course. Don't make it personal. I think give a bit of time to see where things are heading. Now, I'm talking about up to this point. But if you think you've seen enough, I'll probably agree with you. So barring a miracle, that's what it would be at this point. Barring a miracle, this thing's heading nowhere. Kind of goes to PJC's point right here. I'll go back to the comments. Hi, Dave. Sorry, but no more doubts about this coaching team. Hey, dude, you don't have to be sorry. As I said, voice it. It should not be accepted. From the higher ups at Florida, from administration, no, don't accept this. That's how you turn into something you don't want to be for a long bit of time. It's already been too long. But no, you don't accept this. And I've always hated you can't fire coaches every 3 or 4 years. Yeah, you can. The problem isn't firing coaches. The problem is hiring the wrong coaches. You keep doing it till you find one. To me, that vicious, especially in today's world, the transfer portal, I actually would defend, if it's not getting done in 3 or 4 years, yeah, you make the move. This whole give time. Oh, no, there's a limit to that. He's had enough time. And I ain't saying, now don't get me wrong, when Billy Napier was hired, I expected to be well ahead of the expectations we had coming into this season. But given what we have seen, resetting expectations, okay, this is, if things are headed in the right direction, this is kind of what I've always put to that. 7-8 wins is possible. Acceptable in year 3? Most coaches, no, probably not. But given the benefit of the doubt, okay, 7-8 wins. As I said, reset expectations a bit. But no, when Billy Napier was hired, this is not what I thought we were getting. Absolutely not. Took him too long to come around NIL. I've preached that from the top. So that's nothing new. That's not me coming back around. Have I talked about it in a while? No, I don't want to beat the same dead horse over and over again. But a lot of that conversation that takes part on Gators Breakdown Plus, yeah, I was not a fan of the portal strategy earlier on. I wanted to flip the roster faster. This whole building a culture, building a locker room, that only matters if you win games. Why is Trevor Etienne somewhere else? One of your best players. He was tired of losing. If you can win enough to build through recruiting and high school recruiting, fine, take that route. But that path's going to come back to bite you if you don't get those wins. The transfer portal is open market. Guys are going to be tired of losing. If they see a better opportunity somewhere else, you hope there's some loyalty. Absolutely you do. And most guys are going to stick around through the thick and thin. But some of your better players, they're going to be getting poached or attempted to get poached. So you want to talk about overpaying? Florida may be having to, quote-unquote, overpay for some of their guys on the roster just to keep them if this thing keeps heading in this direction. Okay, let me see here. Going back to the starred ones here. Billy seemed nervous preseason interviews to me. Maybe lately. I know I've noticed something. I don't think he felt good this past week. A lot of people were mentioning that to me. I didn't think he felt that way around the spring speaking tour, SEC media days. I thought there was an exuded confidence there. False, of course, the way it looks, or hopefully not, but the way it looks right now. Anthony Morrison says, O-line double trash, D-line trash. We play offense on hard mode. Play calling gets predictable. We don't start the best players. Jason Yulee, hey, man, thanks for the other side of this. I may be the only one, but I don't think all is lost. We had a lot of moving parts in the offseason. They just didn't come together for this game. Jason, man, I hope you're right. I honestly do. There's been, of course, having this podcast for a while, having, dealings on social media and stuff. It's you're negative because it's more popular. You get more clicks. No, it's actually the other way around. I get more clicks. I get more listens consistently. Now, for a one-off like this, sure. But if this continues for Florida, listenership doesn't go this high. Views aren't that high. I get more listens, more views consistently with a winning product, with being positive. Now, I will never be positive for the sake of being positive. I'm not a sunshine pumper. I will never be negative for the sake of being negative. So, look, I hope not all is lost. I hope this thing turns around. For Florida, as the fan in me, absolutely. As a podcaster as well. As a content creator as well. If I do take it personal, yeah, I hope it does. Because it helps me out. But first and foremost, I want to see my team win. And if I can be positive, I will be positive. But I'm not going to dig my head in the sand. You said a lot of moving parts in the offseason. Hey, Miami got a lot of moving parts too. New quarterback. A couple of changes on the offensive line. New receivers in the transfer portal. Or one receiver in the transfer portal. A lot of new faces on that defensive line that did show up. A lot of new faces. A lot of new moving parts. With Ruben Bain going out. They had a lot of moving parts as well. And they showed up for a 41-17 beatdown. I hope it can come together too, but I have lost confidence that it will. Okay, there are a ton of comments. So everybody thinks, I wish we had something better to talk about. Should I go to the bottom and work my way up? Let's see. Oh, man. Holy moly. Thanks for the comments, guys. I may have, if I could come back and hopefully I have to go back and watch the replay. Hopefully the live chat keeps up with it because I may just have to come back to a lot of these and make another episode just out of comments. We'll see what happens. But Yeah, that might be it. I will try and get to some of these. Let's see. Yeah, Tyler Barron was going with that part we just talked about. Tyler Barron was a beast yesterday. Yeah, it would a new piece for that Miami defense. Brett Suggs brings up a good point too. I noticed multiple times that Moten and Wingo were slow out there at linebacker, looked weak and slow. Why Pup and Shamar wasn't out there, I have no clue. Pup and Shamar got the start, but yeah, I noticed it too. There were a ton of rotating pieces on that defense, and especially at linebacker. Was it, I haven't watched a replay of the game yet, so personnel situations, Miami personnel situations that play into that, wanting to keep the guys fresh on a, scorching day in the swamp. Certainly, those things can be a factor there, but I noticed it too. They were rotating in a whole lot of bodies there at some points on defense. So, Pup, Shamar, certainly your two best linebackers there. I mean, Pup in his first game, especially early on, really showed that he's a better linebacker than Florida's had in quite some time to go along with Shamar James. Brendan Huddleston, thanks for the donation here. I know it's overreaction to say new coach week 1 for next year, but who's a reasonable coach we could get? I'm going to stick to my rules, Brendan. I'm not going to go there yet. I got to hear that a change is coming or the change will be there. I am conservative in that regard. I won't publicly talk names out there. Coach goes. Of course, I mean, I won't hide behind the fact, yes, Lane Kiffin's name comes up a whole lot for the Florida job. Is that attainable? Maybe at some point. Yeah, he'd be at the top of my list for sure. But that's as far as I'll go with that, just because his name comes up a whole lot in the conversation. I think at one point he would have, from what I've been told, crawl on glass for the Florida job. Is it that way now? I don't know. I'm still hoping somehow this finds a way to turn around. I don't think it will. All right, let's go. I don't want to talk bad about our place to play. We love so much, but yeah, it's kind of it's more to do with the team and the staff and the program. But the Swamp being the hardest place to play is a joke. No pride. Come get your wins in the Swamp. It all started with Vandy years ago. It's hard to disagree with it right now. Can it make a difference? Yes, we've seen it. Is it a guaranteed aspect of this? Nope. Not after Arkansas last year. Florida State coming last year. New quarterback. Getting his first start. They walk out with a victory. In a game you're up 12-0. The fans do their part. Don't get me wrong. I still will believe that. But there's two parts to it. Teams got to do their part too. But yeah, teams are coming in here. I mean, I will say the mystique of the Swamp under, those early season wins Billy Napier was able to get the last couple of years. Yeah, that went away yesterday. Yeah, Chris goes on to say here, this wasn't a problem of moving parts. So I agree. This was getting physically pushed around. Cam Ward had time to make a sandwich back there. When have you ever seen a Florida defensive line look that soft? Too much recently. Unfortunately. That's just, yeah. I mean, that side of the ball, just completely. Now since 2020. And I was a big believer in Ron Roberts coming in. Some of the changes they made, personnel-wise. But that looks like more of the same. Looked like more of the same so far. Miami could go on to have this great season. They really could. I still expected more. Okay. I'll go through a few more comments here before I go. I will completely disagree with this because I see it come up a whole lot. We fired Mullen for recruiting and Billy. I don't see it. If that was the case, keep Dan. No. That has nothing to do with it. Goes on to say he didn't get the top talent. Billy ain't getting either. No pass rush. Just because of what we're seeing right now does not mean that keeping Dan Mullen was the right decision. The guy didn't want to be here. He wasn't going to win anything either. Just because Billy Napier may not work out doesn't mean that was still not the right decision. As I said, the problem isn't firing coaches, it's hiring coaches. That's where the issue is. Something that shouldn't be forgiven. Double brewed. Go Gators always. Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. And look at some of this. It's crazy, Just last week, of course, getting out predictions, having some optimistic feelings about this team. We need results before we really know. We can be optimistic if we want. And I've, for the most part, always lean on that side. Maybe a little too optimistic last week? Sure. If you want to call me out for that, sure. Go right ahead. I can take it. As I said, I'm going to be here. I'll be wrong a lot doing this type of stuff. But I'm not going to hide behind what I thought was going to happen besides now what we actually see happening. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, well, I picked 7-8 wins. I still believe it. It's not doubling back. I'll fully admit I probably was wrong. Week 1 overreaction? We'll see. But I don't think so. I will call it like I see it for what I saw yesterday. I ain't going to hang on to some predictions I made. I won't forget them either. Yes, I was probably, I'll admit, probably a little too optimistic. And that's the thing. I was thinking about this on the ride home from Gainesville last night. And I remember, I mentioned that Arkansas game earlier. And that's where I really started questioning some things. And then you had the Missouri game last year. You had the FSU game that was winnable. And I didn't predict those wins. After Arkansas, I didn't predict those wins to happen. But then, as I said, results can change some things. And you had Florida State coming in, quarterback change. Okay, I thought that game was winnable. And there was a lot of ways Florida could have won that game. And I remember thinking back on the drive after that game last year saying, okay, this is not where I thought this program would be after Billy Napier's second season. I was not too high on the program in that moment. Time had passed. Offseason went on. Had some orange and blue Kool-Aid for a few months. Last week comes for predictions. Okay, I feel a little bit better. Now, it was 7-5, 8-4, as I said, overall, where we thought we would be year 3. No, there was some reset expectations in that. Schedule comes into play. Schedule looks even harder now in some ways after this one. Felt better about the schedule after we saw FSU last week, and now after ultimately we got to figure out what Florida's going to look like on Saturday too before we see what the schedule really means for Florida. And yeah, it just because of Florida, the schedule looks pretty hard once again there. So it's been a roller coaster. It's been a roller coaster for sure. The feelings of the program under Billy Napier so far, we're on the long track down right now. And when's the if it's there, is the ride was this a big dip and the ride's about to end? Or is there going to be a climb anywhere? I think we know our answer. I did see it there, too, in the comments. Yeah, certainly condolences out there, and thoughts go with Ricky Pearsall. And if you guys saw, he was shot last night at an autograph signing event in San Francisco. I believe his mom posted this morning that it was a clean exit wound, went there for Ricky. So was supposedly doing given the circumstances, pretty well. Thankfully, that was not worse there for Ricky Pearsall. It started filtering out almost about as soon as the game ended last night. So I know it could have gotten lost out there for some of you. But certainly, thoughts and condolences there for Ricky Pearsall. Hopefully he comes out okay on that end. So, man, that was tough news to hear, and still waiting for the outcome of it for a little while last night. Okay. All right, a lot of comments. Thank you guys so much. I know this episode was a little just out of you. A lot of you guys know I come here on Wednesdays or Sunday. Wow, my days are all off on Sundays after a game. But the start time is usually fluctuating. I wanted to sleep on this one. I had thought about doing this episode last night after the game. After getting back, it would have probably been like a midnight episode. But I was like, you know what? Let me sleep on this. Let me sleep on it. A lot of my feelings are exactly what they were when I went to bed last night. I was a little tired, but also wanted to be like, let me see what the feeling, let me see what the mindset is after a good night of sleep. So this is what you were getting. This is what you were getting. Let's see. Okay. Good stuff, guys. Thank you much. Hit that like button one more time. I know we don't like the result. I know that, but it helps me out. It helps me out. Makes me feel better. Actually, with this and the result of this game, ain't much gonna make me feel better about that. Yeah, but yeah, one more time. One more time. Thank you. So hey, everybody who also came up, there was plenty of you. I don't want to single anybody out. A lot of you came up Friday, seeing me around Gainesville. A lot of you came to the tailgate and hung out. That means a lot. I'm so glad you were there to have a good time and say hello. And it means a lot for the work we do here on Gators Breakdown. And yeah, that was awesome. It really makes me feel welcome. I'm glad you guys like what we do here on Gators Breakdown enough to go out of your way, come say hello. A lot of you got some koozies, Gators Breakdown koozies at the tailgate yesterday as well. But certainly anytime you guys want it, for sure, I will sit, have conversation, say hello, shake hands, all that. Introducing me to your families, your kids, enjoying tailgate festivities with us. That was awesome to see. That was awesome to see and awesome to experience. I'm glad you guys come up and say hello. Make sure I ask your names. I will try to remember them next time I see you. But it does mean a whole lot. So thank you very much for all the interaction. So all right, that'll do it for this episode of Gators Breakdown. Thanks for all you hopping in here. I know it was rough. Hopefully better days ahead. Hopefully we don't have many more episodes like this. But man, it stings. I know, knife is in the chest right now. Hopefully we can come out of this and have some better days to talk about. That'll do it for this episode of Gators Breakdown. I'm your host, David Waters. You can find me on social media at GatorDave_SEC. Guys and girls out there, thank you for joining me on this episode of Gators Breakdown.